I just started short-circuiting, and I could just see the meltdown happening in my circuiting.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Bible Geeks Weekly Podcast. This is episode 116. I'm Brian Sheely.
I'm Ryan Joy.
And thanks so much everyone for tuning in. We're in week 28 of our cross-training series, wrapping up our conversation about mercy. We've already talked about receiving grace, forgiveness, kindness, and now today, as everyone's been waiting for, we're going to be talking about patience. And man, if there isn't just ample opportunities in everyday life to be patient.
Oh, yeah. Especially when you're a dad or a mom or,
oh, yes.
I guess, alive in any way. But yeah, sometimes we talk about not having a short fuse. Like if you're patient, it takes a lot for people to push you to your limits.
Mm-hmm.
And that idea of a short fuse. Of course, the 4th of July just happened not too long ago. So on the 4th, I took the kids to one of those pop-up fireworks stores, and I let them all pick out some fireworks. And Adrienne is the cautious one. She brings out, not just the water bucket, but the fire extinguisher, and everybody has closed-toed shoes and stays 20 feet back, and there's just all these rules. I'm surprised she doesn't have yellow caution tape around it or something.
have one of those uber-prepared ladies in my life,
yes.
too.
Oh, I know, yes. What would we do without them? Because I, on the other hand, have to line up as many fireworks as I can, and I've got them all ready to just shoot off together, and so I take my lighters and I try to light them all up before running back and getting some distance.
Oh, yeah.
And if you want to light a few fireworks all before they go off, before the first one goes off, you have to have, wait for it, a long fuse, right? You have to wait for it. You have to have that long fuse that you can get one and then the next and then the next and then you run away,
Yep.
And that's a big part of what we're talking about today. Not having a short fuse, but patience is about having a long fuse. And the Bible word macrothumia, macro is the Greek word for long. And so the King James word for macrothumia, it translates it long suffering, or Strong's Greek lexicon defines it as longanimity, which I'd never even heard of as a word.
Now you're just making up words.
Long, yeah. But it's the idea of patient endurance, bearing with people and difficult circumstances for a long time whenever we could just, snap and go off of our limit if we had that short fuse. So yeah, patience, having that long fuse is our idea for today.
That's a good, vivid picture I'm sure we can all relate to here. So let's get into our first segment, which is Like the Teacher. And again, we're focusing on some instance in which Jesus teaches us about patience. It's hard not to think about his interactions with somebody he was very patient with in his ministry, and that's Peter. In Luke 22, verses 31 through 34, Peter and Jesus have this intimate conversation in which Jesus is worried about Peter. Jesus knows what is about to happen to Peter. And so he says, "Simon, Simon, you know you're in trouble when your name is used twice." That's where this thing starts out. "Simon, Simon, behold, Satan demanded to have you," almost in a Job kind of way, "that he might sift you like wheat. But I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail." Jesus is praying for Peter. He knows that even if he does fall, he's going to turn again and strengthen his brothers. Peter's having none of this, though. Peter just basically lashes back at Jesus and impetuously says, "Lord, I am ready to go with you both to prison and to death." I mean, good on Peter that he has this much confidence, but he doesn't even know what he's about to get into. And so Jesus says, "The rooster will not crow this day until you have denied me 3 times. And that definitely happens a little bit later on in this story. And for Jesus to have such patience with Peter, what do you see in this that teaches you about having patience with others?
Well, I love this insight into spiritual warfare, the way that Jesus is fighting with Satan over Peter, and the way he's protecting Peter is by praying for him
that
Peter's faith won't fail. And I think that's a lesson for us about instead of getting on people or getting all frustrated with people when they're not who they should be, praying for them through those rough spots and just keeping going. Because Jesus has this unique patience where he knows every empty promise right when it's made. Peter really believes that he's going to follow Jesus into prison and into death, and Jesus can quietly shake his head. Nope, you're not going to make it till the morning. You're not going to make it, 10 hours without denying me. And yet Jesus prays for Peter. And here's the thing, Peter will be true to this grandiose, overzealous promise he makes. He will go with Jesus to prison and to death, just not yet. And that's interesting. Jesus' faith and his prayer show this incredible patience with Peter, and they will pay off in the end. Jesus' prayer is answered, and even Peter's bold intention comes true. But like all of us, we don't just get there overnight. We don't get to where we're trying to go as quickly as we think we're going to. So in Acts chapter 12, we'll see Peter imprisoned for Christ. And Jesus hints in John 21:18 what kind of a death, a martyr's death, that Peter's going to die for him. So this is coming. It will happen, but it's going to take time. And it's just such a great lesson for us as we try to imitate the Master's patience, to keep praying and remember, nobody has arrived. Peter wasn't there where he wanted to be, and we all need our friends to see past our sins and our doubts and our shortcomings while we keep climbing the mountain towards our lofty hopes for ourselves. And we all need to see past their shortcomings, one another's shortcomings, while they're on their way to where they're trying to get to.
Yeah, seeing past their shortcomings. And unfortunately, this kind of goes along with what I was thinking about here. Unfortunately, we just cannot control anyone else except for ourselves. As much as we might want to strong arm people into doing the right thing or to keeping their promises, we can't control them. And even Jesus couldn't have controlled Peter here.
Yeah. Jesus, the great master, the great one who can influence better than any of us, is still watching as Peter fails. But what he is great at is standing by him and holding on to him and just praying him through, encouraging him through, and waiting it out. And sometimes it's funny. Sometimes encouraging people and seeing them through is just about waiting it out.
Yeah.
Waiting for them to become who they need to be.
And that's what I was thinking about here, is just this connection, like you kind of talked about a little bit ago, about parenting. I think being patient sometimes is just a passive, wait it out, wait and see kind of thing. And that pops up so many times in parenting. I'm nearing kind of the end of the phase of parenting where I want to insert myself between our daughter and all the consequences of her choices. There was a time where she would not get hurt if I could control it. If I was going to be there, I'm going to step in and keep her from getting hurt. But as she gets older, there are more opportunities where she makes dumb choices, and we're starting slowly to let her experience the difficulty and the pain of those poor choices so she understands what that's all about. And Jesus here is going to watch the train wreck unfold, which is Peter's denial of him. He's not going to step in and stop it. He's not going to get to that point where he prevents Peter from doing this. He's going to stand there and wait and be patient. And I guess maybe this is another of those instances of why would God allow bad things to happen to good people? Why would Jesus not step in and intervene here? He knows what's going to happen. He's even praying for him that he wouldn't deny him. But fundamentally, I think it's out of Jesus' hands, and it's up to Peter to make the choice. And it just reminds me of the prodigal son's father, who's standing there just waiting for that son to come to his senses, to finally realize that he's eating with the pigs and to go back to his father. The father's just patiently waiting. He's passive. He's not taking control. He's not stepping in and demanding things. He's just waiting. And he's playing the long game here. And if we're going to be patient like Jesus is patient, then we're going to play the long game too and see if I just wait and I pray and I am available, then hopefully people will come to their senses.
Yeah, it's interesting how much of a theme in the Bible waiting is. Waiting is such a huge deal. We wait on the Lord because he is doing something good, and we have to hold on sometimes to see what he's going to do. We're never told to bear with the Lord, because everything the Lord does is good. We don't have to bear with the Lord. We bear with bad circumstances, but the Lord bears with us, and we bear with one another because we're waiting on each other to become what we need to be. And the Lord certainly is patient with us, like that father just seeing. He could have chased the prodigal down and like drug him back, kicking and screaming, I guess, but instead he waited. And sometimes that's our job too, is to encourage, sure, but we can't control it. So sometimes we have to wait for the right response.
For sure. All right, so let's get into our second segment here on the episode, and that is Top 4 Proverbs.
1, 2, 3, 4.
It seems like we just did one of these segments, Top 4 Proverbs, and so if you were patiently waiting for the next one, well, here it is. And so we're going to go through some of the Proverbs here talking about patience. There's a lot of them, actually. So what is the first one we're going to tackle?
Proverbs 16:32, and I like the NIV for this. Better a patient person than a warrior, one with self-control, or the ESV says one who rules his spirit, than one who takes a city. And I just sent this to a friend of mine who was a Marine, and he has this warrior's mentality. You know, this is how he sees the world. But he's trying to shift his mindset to focus on spiritual warfare. And it is a shift that is easier said than done, as with all of us. You know, it's just hard to completely focus in on what matters most. So as people keep testing him and pushing him in ridiculous ways, honestly, I thought of this proverb and I shot it over to him because it reminds us what true power is. It reminds us what the world's strongest man really looks like. It reminds us what a skilled warrior, what a great hero accomplishes. Rather than conquering others, he has conquered himself and his own unruly impulses. He who rules his spirit is better than one who takes a city. And if you can rule yourself and your own spirit, then you can make a difference in a lot of ways in this world.
Yeah, and being patient, I mean, just feels so passive sometimes. As we just talked about with Jesus, he's sitting there really not doing anything as he sees Peter going off and denying him, really. Not that he's not doing anything, he's clearly praying for him and encouraging him, but that's a lot different than jumping in there and taking action on his behalf. I think sometimes we view patience as weakness. And I love this proverb because patience is not weakness. Patience is actually better than getting out there in battle and just swinging your sword. It's about self-control. It's about ruling over yourself. But if you can control yourself, if you can control your words and your thoughts and your actions, I mean, you've really accomplished a lot there. That's quite the accomplishment, knowing that you've been able to tame what is so unruly in yourself that pretty much the whole world struggles to take care of.
Yeah, I like the way you put that, because fighting is often the easiest thing in the world to do, to fight for yourself and to go defend what you think you need to defend. And the real strength, the real power is that self-mastery, not to conquer others, but to conquer yourself. And it makes me think of Bruce Banner as he's trying to watch his heart monitor, right? And keep himself under control and not become this out of control Hulk. You know, that takes real determination and strength to get that completely under wraps and to conquer himself. So yeah, that's power.
Proverb number 2 is Proverb 15, verse 18, where the wise writer says, "A hot-tempered man stirs up strife, but he who is slow to anger quiets contention." And I was just thinking here in reading this how, like, speed kills. Speed is really the thing that just escalates every situation. There's a big difference between throwing a bullet and shooting a bullet out of a gun. It's the speed that's there, it's the explosion that's there that really makes the thing dangerous. And so the faster you go, the faster I go, the more damage I'm able to do. If I'm a hot-tempered person, if I'm just somebody who quickly runs into a situation and starts battling it out, kind of like we were just talking about, then I'm going to do a lot of damage. I'm going to be that bull in a china shop as I interact with people, especially those who I have disagreements with. Am I slowing down or am I speeding up? Do I keep my temperature under control, the temperature of my heart? Do I keep it at like a low simmer where it's always ready to boil over, or is it like ice cold and always under control? And I don't know, for me, as many times as I've jumped out there and just gotten burned by being quick to snap back at somebody, it's surprising that I really haven't learned that lesson earlier in my life, or that I'm not constantly focused on being slow and not being quick to answer a situation. Because it never works out well when you jump out there and start snapping back. That always just stirs up strife and brings contention spiraling out of control.
Absolutely. What does a yellow light mean? Slow down. What does?
Exactly.
Yeah, I've mentioned before the book that had a big impact on me a year or two ago, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry.
Mm-hmm.
We run through life this super crazy pace. So often I'm thinking about the next thing I need to do before I finish the thing I'm on. And that affects how I interact with people.
Yeah.
That affects how much tolerance I have for everything not going exactly as I had it lined up. And it certainly affects the way that I deal with someone who is irritating me or pushing my buttons. You just have to slow down. It's hard not to think of James 1:19. Be slow to speak and slow to anger and quick to hear.
Yeah. So what's our third proverb then?
So I do have a biblical proverb for this, but just for fun, I mixed it up and I took one from Ecclesiastes
Whoa,
that I think
hold
adds
on,
to
hold
this
on.
discussion.
I
No,
have-
it's four proverbs. It doesn't say four proverbs from Proverbs.
I have 4 words for you. Cheater, cheater, pumpkin eater. Please continue.
Okay. I thought it would be fun, and I think it is a helpful idea here from the preacher in Ecclesiastes, the one that's the main speaker there, who has this unusual perspective on just about everything, but particularly on patience here. He says in Ecclesiastes 7, verse 8, "Better is the end of a thing than its beginning, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit." And if you put those two together, you start to see a picture of what patience starts to look like in a way that has us thinking big picture, thinking about not just where we are now, but where are things going to end up. So we just got a big group of people together to go see Black Widow.
Oh.
And spoiler alert, if you haven't seen any Marvel movie in the last decade, I feel bad even saying this, but she eventually dies. So most people who are going to watch this movie go into it already knowing, if you've seen the previous Avenger movies, the end of her story has already been revealed. But this is a little piece of her story in the middle. So it shouldn't sneak up on you that Scarlett Johansson's story in this series has an ending. But spoiler alert, your story has an ending too. And so does everyone else you meet. As fun as your origin story may be, as challenging as dealing with people where they are right now gets to be sometimes, you have to keep your eye on the big picture. And Ecclesiastes is all about perspective. It's about seeing the big picture. It's about keeping our mortality and the difficulties of life in view, and that very few things go the way you expect, but you have to see it through to the end. And so the preacher says, work towards the ending. Don't just fall in love with the beginning. We love holding a baby. We might shy away from a deathbed conversation, but which one is going to be more impactful ultimately? You know, it's exciting to start a new project, to plant a church, to baptize someone. But what matters most is completing the project, sustaining the church when things get rough, helping people finish the course in their faith. I mean, it's all good, but you can't just start things and move on. You have to finish them and think through to the finish. And as we work with people, we have to keep their ending in mind, like Peter with Jesus. He could see to the end and he's praying for him. He knows what's going to happen tomorrow, but he also knows what's going to happen into the future. So we don't just think about where they are right now. We see the whole story and we hope for their best, and we know that none of us are quite there yet. So being patient rather than proud includes seeing the end and not just the beginning.
I should have worn boots on this episode. You're stepping on my toes, dude. I am the kind of person in my life who loves to start things. And if you can ask my wife, she'll tell you about all kinds of things that I've started, but didn't actually finish. And I'll call it a proverb. This proverb in Ecclesiastes really is talking about that thing that I need to hear. It's like, yeah, it's fun to start something, but it is so much better when you've come to the end of it and completed something, really just seen something through to the end. And that is going to take work. It's going to take commitment. It's going to take a lot of investment. I don't know that I always have the stomach for that kind of patience and that kind of commitment that some of these things that I've started really want to have me commit to them.
Yeah. And there's nothing that takes more patience than people work, than the project of, we were just talking about parenting, raising our kids, the project of seeing through a marriage from wedding day to the end of our lives, to 55-year marriage if you're blessed to have it, and certainly the work in the church of not just baptizing people, but sticking with them and leading them through all of the difficulties. So I can relate to your question, do I really have the stomach to see all of these projects through? Because I'm a project starter too. and it really does matter that we have patience to keep going with.
Well, let's talk about finishing something else here. Let's get into our fourth proverb in our top 4 proverb segment, and that is Proverb 25, verse 15. With patience, a ruler may be persuaded, and a soft tongue will break a bone. I really just keyed off of the breaking bones part at the end of that. I thought that was pretty cool. Maybe ties into your warrior mentality a little bit. Daniel-san really wanted to learn karate, but Mr. Miyagi would always say, wax on, wax off. For all of us who just want to instantly resolve a situation, like we have some goal in mind, we've got something that we want to have accomplished, we want to do like the Matrix style, download it into my brain, now I know how to fly a helicopter thing. But so often, I know, right? But so often, there is not going to be an instant resolution to a problem. And in order to persuade someone, even a ruler, you're going to need to be patient. In order to really make something happen like breaking a bone, it's going to take a soft tongue rather than going in there guns a-blazing. I think that's just what people who are experienced, who are wise, they know this already. Like they know that it's not just about buying, a fancy pen and now you're going to be a great writer. Or, it's not about like just doing some small thing. Like real mastery, real impact is going to take time. I need to remember that patience is the key to that equation of getting where I want to be in persuading people, in really just making things happen in this world. It's about softness and it's about waiting. We just want to jump into the solution sometimes. We want to get to the end of it. And the journey really is going to take a lot of time.
Yeah, so breaking a bone is a good thing in this proverb, right?
I think so. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, well, so the idea, I guess, is that a gentle touch can have a major effect, right? And so patience is going to ultimately persuade someone, and softness and gentleness is going to be effective and mighty. Going back to the picture of the warrior, I think that it speaks to the delicacy, the Tai Chi like dance to stick with this. So to stick with the karate idea, those different arts where you use someone's motion against them, like Hapkido or Aikido, where, things are coming at you and you're just moving. If you could see my hands moving all over, I'm doing like all kinds of weird karate moves.
Doing karate in your recording studio.
Yeah, in my recording studio. Yeah. Somebody comes at you, you're going to be more effective if you don't just jump down their throat full force, but you move out of their way and direct their energy towards some place that you want them to go, and that you're trying to, just like Jesus constantly does.
That's just what I was thinking.
In his dialogue with people, he's constantly redirecting and taking people's energy and moving them Aikido-like into this particular place that he knows they need to go. So soft tongue is that gentle touch of the Aikido Tai Chi master breaking bones. Jesus the bone breaker.
I did not expect us to go there on this episode, but wow, we've been all over the place here. So let's move on to our third segment, and that is Through the Week.
I am ready to face any challenges that might be foolish enough to face me.
So every week we drop 5 challenges that we're going to do, and we encourage you to do them along with us. This week we're focused on patience, and so our first challenge is a reading challenge, and together we're going to read Luke 22:31-34, which we talked about earlier, 1 Timothy 1:12-17, Proverbs 16, verse 32, Romans 15, verses 1-7, and 1 Thessalonians 5, verses 12-18. And I focused here on 1 Timothy chapter 1 from verses 12-17. And what we see here is that we have a mirror of Christ's patience. We have Paul here in this story who's basically telling us how he was a terrible blasphemer. He was formerly just a sinner, really the chief sinner by his own admission. And in verse 16, he says, "But I received mercy for this reason, that in me, as the foremost, Jesus Christ might display his perfect patience as an example to those who believe in him for eternal life." So when God shows us, who are terrible sinners ourselves, when he shows us patience and mercy, it just shows how much he's willing to bear with people. And so rather than, I think, running away from my former sins, the way I used to live, rather than running away from that, when I own up to that, and then I couple that with God's forgiveness, it shows a clearer picture of just what God is capable of doing for people like me. And as Paul said here, he is a display. He's a mirror image. He's shining a light on Jesus' forgiveness, Jesus' mercy by the patience he showed him. He's shining that light out into the world. And I think that's just a great thing for us to remember, is that we can mirror Christ's patience toward us into this dark world around us and let them see just what God is capable of doing.
Yeah, that's a great transition into our reflect question, which is about God's mercy and patience that we reflect towards others, like a mirror reflecting the sun's light into a dark corner. So the question is, am I willing to bear with others' weaknesses and failings as God bears with mine? And we've used that phrase, bear with, several times now. You just used it a minute ago, but we haven't really dove into that. Such an interesting Bible phrase, to bear with people. And it really speaks to the beauty of putting up with each other. Most parents have said to our kids, as I often do, I won't tolerate whining, or I won't put up with this.
Yeah.
And we're saying we won't allow it to go on without correcting it. But the Bible says to bear with one another in Colossians 3:13. Ephesians says the same thing. And that word means to regard with tolerance, to endure, to bear with, to put up with. So it might be painful for me to admit that people have to tolerate me to put up with my failings, but let's be honest, they do.
Oh, yes.
Brian, you are a good friend to me. You put up with me being late at times, getting my article to you, and many other things that you have put up with and tolerated over the years that just reveal the flaws in my character. And it doesn't excuse me being late or whatever else I've done, but you put up with it. My wife.
And likewise.
Yeah, well, sure. Whenever people put up with you, then it's hard not to say, okay, none of us have it all figured out. And so we just put up with each other. My wife puts up with me trying to fix her problems instead of listening patiently as she talks it all out. She puts up with a lot of things. And it sounds bad. It sounds like, oh, you have to be we're not giving a picture of, I'm going to grit my teeth and deal with you because I don't want to know you, but I'll tolerate you. No, it's because of love that we bear with one another. It's because of this importance and worth that we see in each other, and because of our humble awareness that we too need people to put up with us as God constantly puts up with us. So if I'm to do this biblically, I need to recognize that whenever I see someone failing, I don't always have to hold it over their heads. In fact, I never should. I don't always have to go to them and tell them about it. There's a time to correct someone, but I don't need to appoint myself the keeper of all righteousness that points out every wrong, noting every single time anyone messes up. It doesn't excuse the wrongdoing when I bear with it. If I want to bear with you, I have to put up with your shortcomings, just like God, and to a lesser extent, everybody else who loves me has put up with mine.
Well, and it's just the reminder that if I don't want somebody to kick me to the curb from one mistake that I've made, or maybe from a series of mistakes that I've made, then I need to be willing to extend that to other people if that's the way I would want to be treated. And then clearly, God has watched me countless times mess up, and his patience with me is not exhausted. And so, again, extending the mercy, mirroring his mercy out to other people means that I put up with people in a lot of the same way I think that God puts up with us. I mean, to be honest.
Yeah, I like that phrase, inexhaustible. His tank of patience seems to be virtually inexhaustible. And so he patiently waits for everybody to repent. And at some point, he's going to say, okay, I've given you as much time as I can give you. But yeah, an inexhaustible source of patience.
All right, so that leads to our request challenge, which this week we're going to pray to the Lord, Lord, give me the good sense to be slow to anger and overlook offenses. That's based on Proverbs 19, verse 11. And I love here how this proverb just basically tells us it makes sense to be patient. It makes sense. Good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook an offense. You know, I want to think that I'm a sensible and reasonable person, but flying off the handle and living with a short fuse like you talked about earlier is just a foolish way to live. For as many times as I've flown off the handle and said something or done something quickly or hastily, I've always looked back on that and just said, that was stupid. That wasn't any kind of way to act. And if I don't want people treating me that way, I certainly don't want God treating me that way. So calling on the Lord to help me reason through my responses is going to help me be more thoughtful and connect my being with my doing, the way we always talk about here, how much I need to really have that sensible response that God always wants me to have.
Yeah, I like that. Be sensible. So our Respond Challenge gives another sensible idea to take extra time this morning to prayerfully prepare to respond graciously to the day's difficulties. And I think this speaks to the power of a head start. The other day, I was determined to get in a workout, even though the only time I could fit it in was right after I'd eaten lunch.
Ooh,
Have you
that's
ever
dangerous.
done this? Yeah. So I should have skipped lunch, or I should have skipped the workout because it was awful. And I could see the difference on the heart monitor. I could see it in how I felt. I could see it in how I performed. And every day we're running a spiritual race, and we can either give ourselves a head start or we can give ourselves a deficiency, like a full belly that slows you down before you even start. And this is the other side of that proverb that I talked about the beginning and the end. Before we talked about the importance of the ending, but this speaks to the importance of a good beginning. Because how you start can sometimes determine how you finish. Starting your day with purpose, with prayer and a clear head, can give me an amazing jump start on the rest of the day. I used to email my intentions and prayers for the day to a friend every day as soon as I got to work, which was just really helpful. Here's everything I want to accomplish. Here's the attitudes and the relationship outcomes I'm praying will come about throughout this day. And I stopped doing that whenever I left that job, but I still find it important to pray early in the morning every day, or to write down what are my intentions and to think through what is important today before I even start. And I know you have a habit of journaling in the morning and thinking about these things, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Getting a good start in the morning, I think, is huge. And it's hard not to think about the Lord's Supper here when I'm thinking about this, because I think that's one of the great powers in every week, beginning the week by thinking about Jesus' death. Not like we so often talk about clearing out all the worldly things around us, but like in that moment, when I'm thinking about Jesus' death, think about what that means on Monday as I'm sitting there. What does that mean on Tuesday when I'm sitting in a meeting with my coworkers? How does Jesus' death, how is that going to prepare me for Wednesday when I'm talking to my family? Or whatever it is, all these scenarios that I'm going to face throughout this week. How does this moment prepare me for that kind of difficulty that I'm going to face and help me really become or realize the person that I know I want to be, that I'm intended to be? How does Jesus' death really shape that whole rest of the week that's going to follow?
Yeah, as you say that, it makes me want to spend more time in the morning on Sunday preparing for the Lord's Supper, because that supper goes by so quickly, and I want to be ready, and I want to spend some significant time orienting myself and my week around the cross. And I want the time in the assembly when we're together and we're taking the supper to be meaningful and to be focused on these things. And that takes some preparation too. So, that kind of goes with the same idea.
All right, so then let's get into our last challenge here on the episode, and that's a reach out challenge. So we're going to ask someone this week, what irritation or button is the Achilles heel of your patience? So Ryan, what really gets on your nerves?
Ooh, too many things probably, but definitely when there is a lot happening, I do not do well. And I've probably talked about this before because it is a constant tension in my life as somebody with an ADD brain that doesn't always handle a lot of turning wheels at the same time, and who also has 4 kids. So I mentioned whining is one, and the other is this idea of too many people creating chaos at the same time. And when you put those two together, my brain goes crazy. And so the other day I took all 4 kids to the grocery store, and we hadn't done that very much for a while. We hadn't taken all of them to the grocery store, and it was just me with them. And when the youngest one is crying about something not going their way, another is trying to help me scan a pie at the checkout, turning it upside down in the process. A third is wandering away down an aisle as we try to check out, and a fourth is trying to ask me a question. I just started short-circuiting, and I could just see the meltdown happening in my circuiting, in my wiring, and I managed to get out of there, speaking gently to all of them, correcting and corralling them.
Herding kittens.
So true. Crossing the street and trying to get through the parking lot. Everybody hold on to somebody, and all the parents know what I'm talking about. But once I collected myself in the car, I had a few notes on their performance, and,
That's a great way to put it.
I have collected a few thoughts, some constructive feedback, and, I'm not always able to make it through without that last nerve fully fizzling out. That time I did okay, but it was really pushing my limits. And so that would definitely be the first thing that comes to mind when I think of a button that gets pushed on my patience. How about you? What button gets pushed on your patience?
I think for me, my last nerve sometimes has to do with assuming that people are doing something on purpose. And I've caught myself with this a few times, and actually it happened today. I actually finally got a haircut today for the first time all year long, and I was crazy. My hair was just all over the place, so I went in, sitting there at the barber. Over a distance away from me was this quiet old man who was just sitting there on his phone watching something, but he obviously could not hear what he was listening to. And so his volume on whatever video he was looking at was turned so high that everyone in the whole place was just struggling to even keep focused and talk to each other and hear what each other was saying. And I'm noticing myself thinking to myself, is he doing this on purpose, or does he just have no idea? And I think annoying people around me, assuming that they're doing that on purpose, is probably the thing that tries my patience the most. And the thing that I've realized that if I can do this thoughtfully, that makes the difference, is just realizing that they probably have no idea that they're doing something annoying, or that tapping foot on the airplane seat behind you. They probably have no idea that that bothers you or that's annoying to you.
I'm going to annoy this redheaded guy in front of me.
Exactly. Like whoever
that's
does that.
That's their true goal.
Yes.
Yeah. But it feels that way.
It so feels
like,
that way.
Why do you want to hurt me?
And I think I jump to those conclusions so often. Like it's easy for me when I realize somebody just has no idea, or even like if there's some inanimate object in the room that's causing a weird noise or something that's happening. Like, I can get over that, but as soon as I ascribe like evil intention to somebody as a basis for them bothering me or annoying me, that is when I just lose it. And man, if I'm just not learning every day to be more patient through those kinds of moments, I mean, I'm going to be on an airplane for quite a while here in the next couple of days. I'm trying to remind myself, don't get bothered by things that A, you can't control, and B, they probably don't even know they're doing anyway.
That's so good. It's so true how people can become villains in this story that you make up so quickly.
And he was twirling his mustache. And,
This morning I went out and our trash had not been taken, but everybody else's trash had been taken. And so it must have been too heavy, or I broke some rule or something. But I immediately was so mad at the guy. You know, there's no note. There's no like, I don't have any idea. What was the problem? You know, what did I do wrong? Why didn't you just take it? And as I thought about it, I realized that really my strong annoyance had more to do with the fact that I hadn't eaten yet. I'd had too much coffee, probably. I didn't get very much sleep. You know, there's all this stuff, and I'm realizing I am not my best. This has very little to do with it. What's the big deal? You'll figure it out with trash. Why are you so upset? But it's amazing how that trash guy became a evil, nefarious villain very quickly in my mind.
Oh, man. So this whole episode has been about patience, and we have reached the end. And so thank you so much for sticking with us and being patient with us. And we've also reached the end of our conversation about mercy. So what are we going to be talking about as the next mark of the master coming up next week?
We're going to spend 4 weeks on integrity, which will be fun. And we'll start with a discussion of the whole truth. Paul spoke of preaching the whole counsel of God. The psalmist says the sum of thy word is truth. And if we are to be integral and have integrity within ourselves, we need all of God's word to lead us.
Looking forward to that. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning into the Bible Geeks podcast. You can find us on our website at BibleGeeks.fm. You can find show notes for this episode in your podcast player of choice or at BibleGeeks.fm/116. You can also follow along with this cross-training series on our website as well. And hey, if you're looking for ways to support the show, we'd love it if you'd share the show with a friend. We get so many people who come to the show for the very first time because a friend recommended it to them. So if you'd love to support the show, please do that for us. We'd really appreciate it. And until next week, everyone, may the Lord bless you and keep you.
Shalom.